Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. Today, we have Jeanne Catherine with us. And Jeanne Catherine is the Executive Director of Three Principles Research and Consulting and a PhD student at California Institute of Integral Studies. Mobilized by her understanding of the three principles, Jeanne Catherine discovered mental health and well-being that propelled her personal and professional life into productive and inspired thriving. After running a successful 3P private practice, Jeanne Catherine was hired full-time by Ron McBetty to organize and direct research on the efficacy of the three principles of health realization in a variety of populations. And Jeanne Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really happy to see you on here because it's been a while since we've done a webinar. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much. I am really pleased to be here with everybody, especially because, as you know, we've been in our homes, many of us, for some of us many weeks. I think it was somebody in New York say they were in their third week, and I was like, what? How could that be? We're in our fifth week where we are. And I'm sure that's varies depending on where you are. So I just want to say what a pleasure it is to see your faces. I'm totally have all of you on my video screen so I can see your faces, and you're smiling, and you're wherever you're at right now, of course, is welcome. But it's nice to see other people outside of my family. So thank you. One of the things we wanted to touch on today was about thriving while sheltering. And in particular, I've gotten a lot of calls from people who are struggling with family dynamics at home, either with a partner, a loved one, a parent, or a child, sometimes more than one, a sister or brother, people who we are living in close quarters with. And so I wanted to start there and also be open to questions that come up or things that you might need right now. And so if we can open up the call, let's do that, and answer questions. Fundamentally, what I want to encourage people who are struggling with sheltering in place with another human being is that the one thing that might give you help or sustenance during this time is reminding yourself, sort of reconnecting with the nature of your experience and where it comes from. Because it's easy when we're with somebody else to forget that our well-being is not dependent on their behavior or what they're doing or how they're acting. And I can give you a perfect example of this because every day of our sheltering, we have had this one particular incident in my family, which seems to repeat itself every single day, where my younger daughter does something that my older daughter finds disgusting. And so my older daughter is schooling my younger daughter on what is wrong with her. And as a parent who has spent a lot of times with my younger special needs child, like helping her navigate that emotional landscape, helping her sort of get over shame and feeling like she's incompetent, and like just helping her see through that. For a moment when that happens, I get all caught up. I feel angry. I want to yell at my kid and tell her, stop, don't talk to your sister that way. And it is a theme in our household in the sense that it's happened, I think, pretty much every day of the last 5 weeks. Having said that, what's amazing, and one of the things I really cherish about understanding how the mind works, which is what the three principles of health realization can really gift you if you look at it and reflect on it, is that there's an incredible amount of resilience in our household around these conversations. So that it doesn't become, even though it's happened, even though we've been reactive, even though we forgot where our experience is coming from, each of us blames somebody else in the household. Even though that happened, all of us were very resilient every single time. It's like, I'm sorry, I totally did that. This is what's going on with me. That's why I thought that. And I know that the more that we allow that, the more that we allow that buoying, that natural resiliency to come through, the more we drop what's on our minds, then the more time we get to spend in that resiliency, in that connection, and the less time we spend in our reactivity. And so this is something to consider when you're sheltering in place with a loved one, is the difference between reactivity and reflection. It's a very subtle difference, but it feels really different. When you're reactive, it feels very tense and angry or hurt, or the feelings can be quite constricting. And when you're reflective, it feels more like open, more like relaxed, more calm. And so we have this capacity as human beings. And this is something that the three principles of health realization really point to. It points to our capacity as human beings to see that we can do one of these, that we have this choice. And the more that we make this choice, then, the more flexibility, the more agility, the more resilience we have, because we see the choice and we make that choice. So that is sort of an introduction to who am I and how do I navigate this circumstance, which is incredibly unusual and which could be perceived as causing a lot of suffering and pain. So I thought we would go from there and see what kinds of questions people have, or what you'd like to reflect on today for your experience. The idea being that we get to connect with each other, that we get to remember who we really are, and we get to really relax into the potential of being a spiritual being in a human body going through this experience together.
And so just a reminder, if you have a question or you want to make a comment, you can unmute yourself, or you can raise your digital hand by opening the participant window and clicking raise hand. And don't worry if you're in your pajamas and didn't comb your hair, because Jean Catherine is the only one on screen.
Yeah. Yes, be confident.
Exactly.
Nikki? Hi, Jean. Hi. Sorry, I always get your names mixed round the wrong way. I have this awful dyslexia when people have got two Christian names. And I think the more I go through life, the worse it's getting. That's already been really, really helpful. And I have to say, I didn't know this was the topic for this. I thought I've been reading your things on Facebook. I just thought it would be nice to sort of hear what you had to say. I've got two young children who are 5 and 2, and the older one, who's 5, is she has real tempers. She's really stormy, and it's, I think, just because we're all hanging. She's obviously normally at school, and I think, I'm getting a lot of like, oh, I think she needs more stimulation and blah, blah, blah. And she's being amazing. She's reading loads, she's drawing loads. So we're having so many amazing times. But we've had a really sunny week in the UK, and she asked me to go and lie on the grass in the garden and look up at the clouds. And so we were finding shapes in the clouds, and it was amazing. And I said, do you know there's always a blue sky there, there's always a sun? And she really loved it. And I wondered whether whether you have any. I find it quite hard to impart this to her, other than, I've had a couple of glimpses. I can see it. I'm really good at it with loads of areas of my life, but I've only had a couple of moments as a parent where I've really gone, oh, that was me really living in it. You know, that was me really seeing all of this and seeing how powerful and grounding it is and all of that kind of stuff. And she was so hooked. I said, oh, let's make something. So I was going to make a sort of dial and have, you know, weather on top and blue underneath. But I just wondered whether there's anything you have ever done with your children or something that just touches that they can feel quite excited by and it can grow with them.
Yeah, this is a really common question for parents because, of course, we want our kids to navigate life beautifully and with ease, and we want them to be resilient and get over themselves. And you know, of course, we can't control what our kids learn. This is a rub of being a parent or even a partner, I think. It's something that you learn as a divorcee when you divorce the other person. You know, you learn you can't control the other person, but I don't know that everybody learns that. So this piece that you shared with everybody about how you were lying on the grass and it occurred to you to tell her about the blue sky and how it was always there and how that intrigued her. I mean, that's going to be a memory for her that has some stickiness because it was this connection. It was in relationship with you and she was intrigued, right? So it piques her level of awareness and attention. So the first thing I want to do is just really honor that you have this incredible wisdom to share with your children at the exact appropriate time and that there's nothing more that needs to be done. You know, that's there for you, obviously, and will continue to be there for you. So I really want you to have that for yourself. And then I want to say also that that's going to continue to show up. So you don't have to, in this particular teaching, the great news is you don't have to do anything. You don't have to make it another thing you accomplish as a parent. And so I really want to honor that too. I can see the temptation of like, you know, yeah, there are books and things that you can read that are written for kids. Even among the mindfulness community, there are some really nice things out there about how thought works. There's a really fun one that I bought my daughter that then she refused to read, of course. And I can tell you that it always surprises me. So when my children were, I think, 9 and 6 or something like that, my younger daughter, we were on our way to school, we were late. My younger daughter kept throwing the lunchbox and I would go, I don't know why, but I would run and get it and bring it back. And then she would throw it again. And then I would run and get it and bring it back. And then she would throw it again. I mean, it was just like this nightmare of a parent moment where I am doing totally the wrong thing. And I'm losing it because we're late. And I was going through a divorce. And, you know, I was only very freshly into the principles, probably 2 years into the principles or something. And I said to my younger daughter, I said, that's it. You are not getting lunch for school today. I'm so mad. You're not even getting this lunchbox. And my older daughter heard me and she said, oh, Mom, you can't do that. She has to eat lunch. And if you saw my younger daughter, you would know how concerning this is because she is very thin. She's a rail thin child. So my older daughter is already very concerned. I'm going to starve her without lunch. And I hear her and I start to cry. Just like sobbing. And you know how that is, you're driving at the car and your kids are like, is Mom gonna make it out of this? Like there I am sobbing. And my older daughter says, Mom, think about something else. And she knew what I was doing. She knew how I was replaying the scene in my mind. And I was thinking about what a crap parent I was and, you know, how I had failed. And she invited me to put it down and just stop. And that, you know, she doesn't know anything about the 3 principles, but our conversations, you know, it led to that. So, bravo, Mom. Yeah, bravo.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels lovely when you fit, you know, when you have those deep moments. It feels really nice. It feels just even a disciplined situation feels totally loving and calm and that kind of thing. But there are a lot where then that doesn't happen as well.
I know, it's
Yeah.
so funny because it's so human. Like
Mm.
both things, the losing it and forgetting that we are a product of our thinking in the moment and that we are reactive to that sometimes, and also forgetting that these moments, they're not, our brain makes time linear for us. So it looks to us like, wow, it's been a really long time since I had one of these moments.
Yeah.
But the truth is we don't have any idea. We just don't know how, if the brain is organizing time for us, we just don't know. We might as well just enjoy it because we don't know what's coming.
No, and I'm aware that every minute of the day that passes where you're not in distress, you're probably having them all the time, aren't you? You're not sort of observing them so much. So
Yeah.
lovely.
But I mean, that's
Thank
a
you.
great point. Yeah. Thank you, Nikki. So nice to see you.
And you. Lovely to see you.
That was great. What stories do you guys have of living in sheltering? It's inspiring. Pam, are you coming on? Oh, you have to unmute, I think. Oh,
Sorry,
it's
my headphones. I can hear you through my headphones. Apparently, I can't speak through my headphones. So it's interesting for me because my husband has been working from home actually since February 3rd because he had a total knee replacement. And about the time I was really ready to go back to the office, everybody in the office was going home to work. And I just, the whole, and that had been 6 weeks. So I just was sort of low level mad about it the whole time because he had set up his desk. We only live in a 1,000 square foot apartment. He had set up his desk on our dining room table, so he's right in the middle of all the living space that I was used to occupying by myself every day. And I just found myself, really in a bad mood about it, and I just was like, okay, there's a solution to this issue. I don't know what it is right now, but there's a solution. There's a way to fix this, to ameliorate the issue. And so I just, all of a sudden it came to me, well, maybe he could just push all of that into the bedroom where the door could be closed so I could live my life in a more normal, situation, which we did. It was, it was work for him to move all of his 3 computer monitors and all his equipment and all the things, but it was great. And then the other thing I was just going to talk about is that we're currently building a house, and he and I have very different, certainly in the past, have had very different tastes. So having to choose like a bazillion things.
Yeah.
And so we kept, he would suggest something and I'd go, rah, 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 and I would suggest something and go, rah, rah, rah. So I finally said one day, could we just, couldn't we just try saying, when one of us suggests something, the other person is saying, well, let me think about that, just to give it some time and space, and just sort of, so it was just felt so wise to say, okay, just give it some time and space and don't, have our normal reactions to things. And it's amazing when I actually let my mind be quiet, how wisdom appears and, solutions appear, and, and to just be open to the infinite possibilities. I mean, it's very bizarre. My mother died in August, and my one of my sisters is the executor, and she's just been really quite a pill. And I just want to go, there's so many solutions to this problem, but she's very rigid in her thinking about things. And it's like, okay, well, you're the boss. So it's just been interesting to really watch that whole process too, and just go, oh, there are so many other ways to do this, but it's, we as humans get really stuck in our thinking that this is the right way to do it. This is the only way to do it.
Mhm. Thank you, Pam. I think it's a great example of how we forget the inside out nature of our experience, how we get caught up in the illusion that, if I control this, I will feel better, right? And
Right.
certainly when people are going through grief, that is a huge reaction, is to think, well, I'll control all these pieces and then I will feel okay. And of
Right.
course, it doesn't work that way.
No.
Nobody feels better when they're grieving their loss of their mother by
Well, it was
controlling.
interesting because I have 5 sisters, so 4 of us wanted to wait like 3 weeks to have mother service. And my sister, who's the executor, is like, I can't breathe till mother's in the ground. And I wanted to say, but you are breathing.
Right. Which could be so unhelpful.
Right. I know. I
Depending on
didn't
the
say
moment,
it.
right?
No,
I
I
know.
didn't say it. Yeah.
And then there's this other thing that you're pointing out, which is the wisdom that comes through when we let ourselves settle, which is available to us, and we forget that. We forget it's available to us. So it's such a great point. That as soon as we let our mind settle, there are fresh ideas, there's new potential. This experience of being home and working full time and providing homeschooling is really unique for me, because I always said I couldn't do that. I always said, first of all, it's fundamentally unfair. Like, why should a mother work full time and mother full time? It's ridiculous. And second of all, it never occurred to me that I could wake up at 3 a.m. and go to work while my kids are sleeping. I mean, I would never have imagined that was a solution to anything. And I really like it. Like, I love being up in the early morning when everybody's sleeping. I love having uninterrupted time for usually 4 or 5 hours at least before other people wake up. And I'm enjoying homeschooling my daughter. Who would have thunk it? I would not have thought it. And so there's this thing that happens when we begin to recognize that we're not in control, and our emotions aren't coming from out there. They're just a response to thought in the moment. They're a reactivity. They're human. They're natural. They're normal. There's nothing wrong with them. And the more that we get comfortable with that, I mean, we may never be comfortable with crying or getting upset or getting angry, but the more we get comfortable with just, oh, this is shifting, this is changing, this is not permanent, then the more capacity we have to ride those waves, to let the mind settle, and to allow ourselves to have access to this thing that's natural or innate within us, which is this calm presence, which naturally allows us to enjoy ourselves and each other. And that can happen for people who even, hate each other. In conflict resolution, as a mediator, I've seen people come in who were so busy and so mirrored in their thinking that they didn't think there could ever be a solution, or that they could ever find resolution together. And yet, as they came to a place of quiet, of reflection, of listening, the natural result of slowing down was to feel connected, was to feel understanding, was to feel compassion, right? To maybe see it the other way the other person sees it, even though you don't agree, right? That's a different place to problem solve from. And so I really want to encourage all of you, if you are not yet at the place Pam was at, where she's like, oh, okay, I see the wisdom here. Like, we got to make some changes. And you're still caught in the, I am suffering with this person in my face. Then I just want to invite you to remember that you have a built-in capacity, that when you slow down and listen, when you drop what's on your mind, your brain naturally rises, your hormones shift, and the natural result is quiet and connection. even with people you don't like, ironically, even with people you're really mad at.
Hi, Jeanne. Nice to see you again.
Oh, it's so great to see you, Harry. Hi.
Nice to see you. Great. What one of the I really like what you're sharing. It's really important, but it's very important to see something within yourself.
Mhm.
It's not just you have a philosophy of life and so on. The problems that 3P people have often is they see themselves as wiser or better than their 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 uh, their their sisters or their etc. That is not going to cut it.
No.
That will definitely lead you the wrong way.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. I've tried it many a time. Guaranteed.
Harry is an expert.
Expert in that particular area. So the gift is that they are sharing something from a perspective that we don't understand, or else we would be in harmony with that person. And I have to get my ego or my head or my opinions out of the way, because I have a whole story in here about that, especially with my sister and etc. etc. That's all nonsense, all of it. We have to, the quieting of the mind means don't pay attention to the negative stuff that is happening in your head. See, we're not interested in what's happening in their head. We're interested in what's happening in our head. And what's happening in our head is our relationship with, has a lot of past story and stuff with it. And we have a big opinion about ourselves.
Mhm. There's a really nice way that Keith Blevins and Valda Monroe talk about this, where they talk about, I can't have the thinking that you're having. So literally, we are in separate realities. I can't think the way you think, and you can't think the way I think. And so what Harry's pointing at here, really, that's one of the lessons in being in conflict with somebody, is realizing like, oh, it's not that you're stupid, which I thought. It's not that you're incompetent. It's that you genuinely think about this differently than I think about it. And so now we can talk about it from a perspective of, this is separate realities where we have different thinking, and you're going to tell me your thinking and share with me, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to tell you my thinking and share with you, and you're going to listen, because that process of really recognizing that you don't think the same way and really connecting and hearing each other, that process is where things begin to really be born from, right? Wisdom arises from that kind of slowing down, that kind of connection. It's built into the system to work that way. And so one of the things Harry's pointing to is the more that you can let go of, let's say, your ego, as Harry called it, or your ideas, your expectations, whatever the words are for that. So your sort of, my older daughter, wants everybody to act a certain way. You should wash your hands this way, and you should, eat that way, or whatever. Those expectations are what she's up against when she's suffering or upset. Just like I have, expectations where I don't want my husband to bring in the projects he's working on into the house and spread them around. I'd rather he uses his shop. Well, those expectations, that thinking is what I'm up against. And so the more that you can recognize, oh, we live in these separate realities, we have different kinds of thinking, they result in different kinds of behaviors. That's not bad. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. But it is human, and it means that we have something to connect over. We have something to get quiet and listen about.
And then we can see clearly. See, the problem is the other way is guaranteed to see poorly.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I came to grips with my sister, who's a lovely human being, but politically she's just way off in right field, and I'm way off in left field type of thing. And every time we would bring up certain topics, we would have tremendous disagreement. And I saw that the harmony was more important than the disagreement. So I started to keep away from certain subjects. They were poison.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Harry. Before the last presidential election in the United States, we had invited a family over for dinner who we didn't know. And it was a camp situation where our kids had met at camp, and we were ride sharing, and we thought, oh, it'd be good if we got to know each other's families. So they came over and we had made this big meal. And at the beginning of the meal, I said something sort of assuming that they vote the way I vote. And they made it very clear that they did not. And I realized right away, I was like, oh, like we are like the extreme left and extreme right kind of coming together at the dinner table. You know, this is an opportunity. And the opportunity was, for me, I took that as, I'm not going to avoid the subject. I'm going to ask a whole lot of questions, because how often do I get to ask why somebody would vote for this other person? Like, when do I get to hear those answers? And from real people, like on the ground with children in my children's camp. So we ended up having, I think, a 2.5 hour dinner where I asked everything I always wanted to ask, sort of like, well, doesn't that make you racist? Like, well, if you believe in that, then how do you deal with gun violence? Like, all of those questions I had about the way this person thinks differently than me, I just went ahead and asked. And at the end of the meal, he said to me, don't tell anyone that I liked you. You know, it was because, you know, I was this sort of extremist in his mind. I, you know, really believe in things that he doesn't believe in. But he liked me because we had a great connection, right? I listened to him. I honored his way of thinking as being separate and unique, and not necessarily bad or wrong, but genuinely not my way of thinking. So that's a really simple way to keep stepping out of your egoic, I'm right, you know, and step out of conflict by stepping into, wait a minute, we think differently. What is that? What does that look like? Be curious about it. And I really want to invite you guys to do that with your families. You know, these are the people who you live with in some capacity, and maybe right now live with 24/7. Be really curious about all the things they think, because you don't know what they are. You might be assuming you might be jumping the gun on what they're going to say next. And this is an opportunity to get quiet and listen to somebody else who doesn't think the way you think, and connect and learn something new that you wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't done it before. And it's a subtle thing. I am one of those 3P teachers who says there are things you can do, but these things are very subtle. They're like, okay, I'm going to back off on yelling at my 15-year-old. Like, I'm mad and I want to yell at her. I'm going to back off on yelling at her. And just doing that subtle thing opens up wisdom, opens up connection, opens up something different, right? It lets me out of the direction I was going in. So this is really a process of undoing, of stepping back, of opening up, of getting curious, slowing down, and not necessarily slowing down in action, but slowing down internally in some way, really noticing, oh, I don't have to run with this particular thinking. It's not necessary, it's not required. And then see what arises, see what's there. Thank you, Harry. Who else has stuff to share?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kineret.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. I have to read. Pam held up, I love the work, and I don't have audio. So it's very sweet. She has no audio, but she loves the works. Thanks for this. So that's very sweet. Yeah. Kineret. Is it Kineret?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I have two questions. So I'm a coach and I work with some people, and I'm relatively new to the 3 principles.
Welcome.
How does the 3 principles work with people who are grieving a breakup? So you know, let's say I work with someone who had a final breakup with a loved one, a partner. Yeah, how does a 3P work with that?
Mm-hmm. That's such a great coaching question. I love that you're a coach. He's like, I got the coaching question. So one of the things I love about the 3Ps as an intervention, and you know, I'm really a researcher, so I'm fascinated by mechanisms and the outside in nature of things. I'm fascinated by them. But one of the things that's really phenomenal about it as an intervention is that, you know, fundamentally, if I were in private practice still, which I was for 7 years, you know, I would have people walk in the door who were suicidal. I would have people walking in the door who were clinically depressed. I would have people walking in the door who were going through divorce. I would have people walking through the door just struggling with, how do I parent? You know, I feel like killing my kids, and I know there's something wrong with that. Like, I shouldn't do that. Or even professors from the university near me would come because they felt like I did all the right things and I'm still not happy, right? Sort of a first world problem kind of idea. Well, fundamentally, you know, I didn't teach any of them any differently, in the sense that fundamentally, the more you grasp the inside out nature of your experience, and the more you grasp that your upset is not coming from another person or an external event, but is genuinely coming from your reactivity about it, the way you think about it, right? It seems from a field of psychology perspective, it's basic neuroscience. You know, your brain makes patterns and pathways, and then you anticipate and then you reinforce. And so you do that without anybody else. Your neurons fire without any stimulus from outside. That just happens. Having said that, there's this other thing in the principles community. It's not just neuroscience, it's also spirituality. And this happens when you're in a room with somebody, and you know what I mean, because it happens to coaches, it happens to therapists, it happens to people who work with other human beings, where we feel connected, we get really present, and suddenly it occurs to us to say something that we've never said or thought of before, that was seemed like maybe would even be irrelevant. And somehow when we say it, it lands in a way that is transformative or transcendent or transpersonal or whatever the word is for the other person. Now, I would say that experience has to do with, you know, sort of my brain's capacity to be a spiritual organ, not just a cognitive organ. And so what the 3 principles teaches is that actually is an integral pathway, not I'm going to do the right thing here, and then I'm going to check in spiritually. But fundamentally, that wisdom, that knowledge, that is the fundamental pathway. And then our cognitive abilities are here to assist. So it's just like if you play a sport, ever played a sport, I used to play basketball, you know, I go for the shot, and then there would be this moment where, you know, it's like everything is flowing, and then, you know, boom, the ball goes in. Now, was there a cognitive or motor pathway function? Absolutely. You know, was there something that felt beyond that? Yes. And that happened to me in private practice, and that happens to me when I write, right? There's something that we have access to as human beings that guides us. And the irony is, and the irony for coaches in particular is, the busier we get about what to do, the less we access that kind of open, relaxed wisdom as it flows through us. And I'm guessing you know exactly what I mean. Yeah. She's nodding. Nobody can see you. I can see you. Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah. So my advice, and I'm going to give you advice, is that when you have questions like these, like, feel free to write them down and feel free to forget about them. You know, I mean, like, don't feel like you have, this is the undoing part. And this was hard for me as a researcher. I mean, every training I went to, I was the person in line with the list of questions, and, you know, I want the answers to these, and how come you didn't say that? And if the 3 principles is this way, then blah, blah, blah. And one day it occurred to me, like, none of these things matter. they are just my busy mind, trying to grasp on something that is not graspable in that way. Right. And the more that I undo and sort of step back from those questions and let it simmer, let it flow through me, and the more that I play in that arena, then the more confident I got about trusting. Right. And that's the thing. It's not faith even, because you see it work. Right. And so you've seen it work. Now it's just sort of working that muscle more, being really present with that person and what she's going through, he's going through. And letting your wisdom, this deeper well, feed you.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. Thank you.
Yeah.
My second question is, I'm also working with a couple. And boy, they're having a very hard time with each other. One person has a lot of things occurring, panic attacks and OCDs and wanting everything now and his way, and the other partner is having a very hard time with that. So same question to you. 3P. How do you work with that?
So given what I said the first time,
Yes.
what do you hear?
What I hear is to show up when I do work with them and be in a space of quiet.
Yeah, it occurs to me that if the therapist or the coach or the person who's helping the couple, whoever they may be, and whoever, even if it were you, if that person was as concerned about the things going on as the couple, then everybody in the room would be caught up and concerned.
Yeah.
Whereas if that person gets that this is fundamentally human, people get confused about where their well-being lies, they blame each other all the time, that this is your fault. If you weren't OCD, I would be so much better, right?
Right.
Then if the coach or the therapist fundamentally gets that, then they show up with a different quality, a different state of mind. And the teaching and the lessons come through that, pointing at, well, wait, hang on a second, let's slow down, right? Where is our human experience really coming from? I get you guys want to talk about that. You've probably been talking about that all week. Let's take it off the table for a minute. Let's back up. Let's get the bigger picture here. And I really want to encourage you guys who are working with people, honor people's stories in the sense of don't be flippant or disrespectful, because people really believe what they're going through and that's very painful to them. And don't get caught up in their story. Don't think that it's true, right? Invite yourself out of that, receive them, listen to them, and then invite them into another way of thinking about and talking about it. And I'll tell you, when I was in private practice, I did a lot of longer work with people. So they would come to me and they sign up for a longer period of time. And I always, at the very beginning in our contract, I make it very clear, we're not going to discuss your problem for at least 6 months. Right? So if you came to me because you chew your nails bloody, or you came to me because your husband doesn't love you, or you came to me because you're thinking about getting a divorce, it's like, well, we'll talk about that, but we're not going to talk about that for at least 6 months. Right? And, I got permission up front to take them through what is their human experience, how does it work? And then every time they would bring up their problem, I'd be like, oh, we talked about that. We're not talking about it yet. Right? You don't have I basically would tell them, you don't have yet the education you need to tackle that problem, right? So you're missing, it's like trying to tackle algebra when you never learned number sense. I mean, it's a terrible idea, right? So I'm not going to put you through that. That'd be incompetent of me, right? Incompetent. So I would encourage you to think about how you're structuring, your sessions for people, and invite them into a different kind of conversation so that they're not spending their time on the problems when they're with you, that they're really spending the time exercising this muscle, which is opening up to wisdom, dropping what's on their mind, learning about how it works, getting reflective and insightful, letting that work for them. And when that works for them in some areas, it will start looking like a good idea to start applying it to other areas. And applying might be a strong word, right? This is the dilemma of the spiritual system. We don't have control, but it's kind of true, like we're putting our attention. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Okay, let me know. I want to hear back from you. You have to email me. I want to hear how that goes.
Can I add, in an
Harry's gonna jump in. He's a first generation Sid Banks guy. He knew Sid Banks, so he's gonna share something. Harry, go ahead.
Yeah. In my evolution as a coach, the key factor, there were two key factors. The wisdom and all that stuff, that's self-explanatory. Obviously, that's a factor growing in levels of consciousness. But the two things that really made a difference was, I'm not there to fix people, period. Yet, if you're into fixing, I did a lot of work in addiction where I was absolutely hopeless. I mean, hopeless. And the reason I was hopeless was every time they brought up something, I tried to give them a good common sense, positive attitude towards that scenario and got zero results. When I changed my understanding, and then that happened, I didn't change it. Then I went into a recovery center and I just talked. I wasn't trying to fix people. Mm-hmm. That had a totally different feeling to it. Yeah. And it really took all the pressure off. And the second thing that I learned from that was, don't look for results. Mm-hmm. You're there as a spiritual tool. They're lucky that you're there. You're lucky.
Okay, but Harry, I have to jump in as a researcher. I want you guys to look for results. No. Harry is totally right on. These are totally key things. I'm glad I saw some people writing them down. So thank you, Harry. And I want to encourage you guys that there are ways to capture what's happening for your clients. Once you learn that and you feel confident that you're not trying to change someone's life, which can really get in your way, I want to encourage people with Thriving 3P practices to consider having some questions, that you ask people at the beginning and at the end. So you can talk to other people about what kinds of things happen. It's not so much from that place of, ego, like I want to see the results and this is what I'm going for, but really from a place of curiosity and a place of, oh, what more can I learn about being with other human beings, about how wisdom works, about connection and what connection can do for a person's well-being, and what this wisdom can heal. And so I just want to encourage you guys to think of research as a tool that is a real world tool to help you explore and be curious like a true scientist, that the potential is infinite and it's limitless. So I want to jump in on that. Omar, I think you said you wanted to ask something.
Oh, hi. Good
nice
to see you.
So nice to see you.
Yeah, I've noticed that you like blue color because every time I see you, you're wearing blue.
I do. It matches my glasses. So I'm like, okay, blue. I'm going to wear blue. It's very funny.
Fair enough. Yeah. So the question I want to ask is regarding difficult people. How do you deal with that? Especially now we're quarantined and I have to deal with that every day.
What was it? I didn't hear what you said. Difficult people?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes. So when you say difficult, that might mean something different to me, right? What does it mean when someone's difficult to you?
Someone who pick on you, like not every time, but like sometimes, and it's it just brought the worst of me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel insecure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when this particular person or a number of people?
It's just one particular person.
Yeah. So when this particular person picks on you, and in that moment, you imagine that this person could put some feelings into you, sounds like?
Well, yeah, at the beginning when I came, because I moved back to Casablanca, Morocco, where I'm living right now. And since I came back, like I was like not worrying about it and just like, like not giving any thoughts about that, not focusing about it. It's like, don't worry about it. It's okay. But then it just got to me, and yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. It's like my blind spot at the moment.
Yeah. So what do you think happened between when it just was not an issue and it didn't bother you, in the moment when, oh my gosh, this has just got to me. It just got to me. Like, what happened?
Well, I kind of the thing they were saying to me kind of thought they're actually true, you know.
Oh, okay. So you had some thinking like, oh, wait a minute, this is true.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So in fact, it wasn't this other person. It was your own thinking that you believed was true, right? Because up until that moment, you didn't have that thinking, I'm guessing. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like when I used to live for myself, now because I live with my family, it used to be different. Like nobody would pick on you. Like it was all right, you know.
Mhm.
And well, the person I'm talking about is my dad. Basically, I came back to my country, and my dad is kind of person like, you came back, you have to be doing something, you know. And actually, I want to build my coaching business. So I'm working on that, and it's not something that's gonna happen in one day. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort, and you know about it.
Yeah.
So my dad doesn't get that. You know what I mean? He doesn't. He needs to see results quickly. You know what I mean? And it's kind of bothering when he brings that. At the beginning, it used to be, like, okay, he's just saying that it's all right. It's my dad, and he's a difficult person to talk with, to be honest. But I still love him though. Yeah, at some point I just had enough from that. I started believing what he was saying, and it really got to me. And I stopped doing like anything related to coaching for a while. It's kind of bothered me.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me tell you a story, if that's okay, Amar, that reminds me of this kind of situation. I went through a divorce with somebody who, you know, I thought of as a difficult person for sure. And when there would be interaction, it would always be high conflict. It was just, the person was always angry and blaming and attacking, and it got to the point where I just felt so hopeless, right? I felt so hopeless in the face of what looked to me like just an onslaught of attack. And one day I was feeling hopeless, and I went to check my email to see if my ex had emailed me. And in that moment, it occurred to me that I was feeling helpless independently of my ex. It had nothing to do with my ex. And I was trying to confirm this feeling of helplessness by going to check for the email from this person, right? And I was like, oh, wait a minute. It always looked to me like I felt helpless in response to this other human being. And in that moment, I saw that helplessness was a feeling that arose and fell away. Feeling insecure, it rises, it falls away, right? The illusion is that those feelings are connected and stimulated by someone outside of us. Now, that's the neuroscience of it. That's not even 3P for you. That's the neuroscience, right? The neuroscience is nobody can put a feeling into you. Nobody has that kind of control. And you are actually riding the waves of your feelings, which are naturally occurring, right? Thought in the moment, revealing itself to you through emotion. And then the quality of that experience you attribute to somebody in your life, right? So if you're feeling glorious and sexy, there's some person on your mind, right? Or if you're feeling angry and frustrated, you know, it's like your dad or whoever, right? Someone's picking on me. But we actually do that connecting part secondary. We don't do it first. It looks like we do it first. So that's one thing to be aware of, is just there's an illusion at work here that you're, you know, really with right now. It's like really appealing and compelling. So compelling, you're not even pursuing coaching right now. Yeah. Which is your, you know, lifelong dream, as far as I can tell. Every time I see you, it's like something you're really interested in. So yeah. So just when I say that, I mean, what do you hear?
Well, now I'm back on track. Like, it took me a while to come back to coaching, and in fact, I just joined Jane Catterson's. She's doing like a 24/7 Zoom room, like for anyone who needs help. So I'm glad to be part of that. Actually, I just had a thought that my dad grew up in a family where I think he was criticized if he doesn't do anything. So he's doing the same, thinking that it's going to help me as well as it helped him. But yeah, I mean, my dad started from scratch. Like he's my hero, because like he started from scratch and he made, you know, he made a lot of money, and then he lost some, and then
he lived.
Say that again?
So he's lived a good life, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I'm aware of the time, because I know I'm supposed to wrap it up in a minute, I think.
Oh, sure.
So, you know,
it's already helped what you said.
I'm glad. And I really want to invite you to, you know, let your dad have his own thinking. You know, let yourself have your own thinking. It's okay for you guys to have different thinking. It's okay. You're not less of a son, and he's not less of a father because you think differently. And fundamentally, the only thing that's ever happening is you're experiencing thought in the moment. And you either see it or you don't. It is not that complicated. So and I know it feels complicated sometimes. It feels like, oh, there's many layers happening. But I want to invite everybody, as we wrap up this call, and we look towards sort of living in the coming weeks, wherever we are sheltering. I want to invite everybody to remind yourself to invite that I live in the thought in the moment. That's the nature of my humanity. And sometimes I see it and sometimes I don't. And that is also the nature of my humanity. That's not better than or worse than. That is just the nature of it. And when I see it, I will relax, I will open up. And when I don't, I won't take myself so seriously, right? I'm just going to ride the wave, because I'm just not always going to see it. Sometimes I am going to yell at my 15-year-old, even though I don't want to be that person. It totally happens to me. So I hope that this has been helpful. Pam wrote, I love this work again. I'm really glad you came. I'm going to make all of you guys write little notes and hold them up, because that's so fun to watch. But I want to thank you all for coming and listening. I want to thank those who listen later. And I want to invite you to be a part of the research. So at 3prc.com, we conduct research. And one of the projects going on right now is actually a resiliency project, where if you're interested in filling out a survey, you can go to my Facebook page, or you can email me. I can send you a link. 3PGC sent out the link. So if you haven't clicked it yet and filled it out, do it now. Don't miss your chance to participate in research at a very high level of peer review. And So check it out, 3prc.com, and let me know if you need support researching your program, because that's something that we do at 3PRC. And Bonnie, thank you so much for hosting us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I think this was really helpful, especially during this crazy time that we're in.
Yes,
Appreciate your
for
time.
me too.
Yeah. Just to let everybody know, we are having another webinar on Monday. That is April 20th with Jackie Ford. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for that as well, live or recorded. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Talk soon.
Thank you.